Good morning, kids. Just me, the Mountain Dew, and the sloth out on the porch this morning. All right, we're coming to the end of the first unit, of this unit, economic geography. And what I thought I'd do today to help you understand, I'm going to first off tell you what we're going to be doing for the test, how we're going to do that, and I thought I'd go over the terms from this unit to see if you basically remembered them. Okay. So first off, what a test is, or what a test is supposed to be, is where you basically show that you understand the main concepts that you covered in class and that you can apply them. So that's what we're going to do. We can't do traditional tests. Like, I'm not coming to your house with a multiple choice test and waking you up and making your parents maybe coffee or something and watch you take the test. Instead, since we're on this brave new world of distance learning, what I think I'm going to do for the test is this. I want to be both fair to you, and yet I want to see what you know. So instead of a multiple choice test one day and an essay test the next day, what we're going to do is this. Tomorrow, I will go ahead and post like about 15 terms that are important from this unit, things that you need to know. And in a short answer format, you're going to tell me what that term is, explain it, define it, tell me what it is, and just a couple sentences is all you need. And then either give me an example of it or apply it. So just a short answer for each term. That will show me whether you comprehend the material or not, okay? You will also be then given an essay. I'll give you an essay like we normally do. There'll be one essay, and that essay is where you go into more depth, where you explain things and you show me you really understand the complexity, how things fit together. For that essay, I will post both the essay and I will post the score sheet that we always do so you understand where it comes from or how it is, okay? So that'll be posted tomorrow on Friday for the test. And then I'll give you all the way through, break starts next week on Wednesday. That probably is a good break for it. Between Friday and next week, Wednesday, to go ahead and do both the short answer part of the test and the essay part. Of course, if you have any questions or concerns or something like that, pop me an email, okay? All right, let's take a look at some of the concepts that we covered in economic geography. We talked about things like the types of jobs there are, primary jobs, the dig-it jobs, farming, mining, stuff like that. The secondary jobs, where you go ahead and you make something, where you take that primary stuff and you do something with it. Manufacturing, where you construct something, you make something. Usually we think secondary jobs, factories. Tertiary jobs, sell it, service it. Those people in the shops that sell stuff. The services, very important. Plumbing, electricians, car maintenance, stuff like that. Service jobs. Quaternary jobs, design it jobs. That's where you basically, the higher level, all the work, the developing of games, of applications and stuff like that. And then we're not going to hit it, but there's also technically a quinary, which is the upper part, those big decision makers. But mostly primary through quaternary, okay? We talked about a new international division of labor. It's kind of the new thing is those secondary jobs, which used to be in America, we're shipping those overseas to other countries, to LDCs and DCs. And why? Because that way then we can use the cheaper labor there, and we have the upper jobs, the quaternary jobs here. And so this new international division of labor, you've seen that so much. A lot of American factories moved to China. Well, now with COVID, how is that working with these worldwide supply chains and that just-in-time delivery we talked about, where you just get what you need right now to do the work? Well, that's all thrown off when the virus hits all around the world. It just kind of messes it up. But that new international division of labor, remember we had all those products we did in class. Your tennis shoes, Nike. Its headquarters is in Oregon, but you know what? They'll make the shoes in China, Vietnam, Indonesia, and other places. It's a new world. So manufacturing, and it's possible because those big shipping containers, it makes shipping stuff so much easier. Okay. Deindustrialization kind of comes with that, the concept of deindustrialization. So we industrialized in America by World War II. We're producing tremendous amounts of ships and stuff like that for victory. But then deindustrialization is when you start to get to the upper levels of Rostow steps, where you start talking about you're not manufacturing it anymore. Now you're using more specialized manufacturing technical stuff, or you're getting that high mass consumption. So in America, we've deindustrialized. Take a look at Detroit, Michigan. That's a great example of deindustrialization. It is a huge city, but now we've outsourced so many things, and our factories are all around America because of right to work laws and stuff like that. It's changed a lot. Deindustrialization is when a country stops manufacturing as much, and then that manufacturing area kind of wears down. So, places like Pittsburgh used to be known for their steel. That was a manufacturing center. Well, when the steel industry in America starts hurting and shifts overseas and stuff into different newer plants, cities like Pittsburgh deindustrialize, and then they have to go ahead and come up with a new thing. Today, Pittsburgh is more known for, well, it's still known for steel, but their technology and stuff. It's a technopole now. But deindustrialization, if you go to England, you look at like Liverpool, where the Beatles are from. It's their old manufacturing area has shifted. Same thing in Europe. A lot of those areas, and the manufacturing has shifted. Today, a lot of it obviously to Asia. And so deindustrialization means your country no longer has those secondary jobs. They've moved overseas, and you have a lot of times urban blight, which we'll talk about in the next unit about that. But deindustrialization or post-industrialization. I mentioned Rostow's model. Now, Rostow's model is really a very good model. Walt Rostow really looked at it and he said, hey, countries go through different steps, okay? You got their traditional thing. That's where, like in America, early America, basically subsistence farming, very little manufacturing. The next step is that conditions to take off. You have to build an infrastructure. You have to build roads. In America, we build our canals and our railroads and stuff like that. Once you get those things, then the next level is where you go ahead and the takeoff, where you start building factories. You start getting industrialized. In America in the 1880s, 90s, after the Civil War, all the way through World War I. Then your next level, your manufacturing becomes a lot more refined, upper level, high tech. And of course, your last level of Rostov, when you start thinking about it, mass consumption. You've moved up. Like America now, we don't make as much as we used to, but we design more than we ever have. And we consume like crazy. Just ask Amazon and Jeff Bezos on that. That's how we, All right. A couple other things. NAFTA, UMSCA. You need to know about those. Europe has the EU, which is economic, where all of Europe is one economic zone. Free trade, of movement of trade between the countries of Europe, and no tariffs on it. Now, of course, with Brexit, England is not going to be part of the EU, and so that'll affect them. That's why they need a new trade deal with both the EU and America. But since that worked, America entered the same type of a concept with both Canada and Mexico. So it was the old NAFTA and North America Free Trade Treaty Organization agreement. But what we've shifted under Trump is to the new thing, where the United States, Canada, and Mexico have come up with a refinement of NAFTA. And if you look at the PowerPoint on that, we took a look at some of the things that changed. A lot of the requirements that we were taking a look at, like auto parts, what percentage needs to be manufactured in these areas, and the wages of people that are paid for that. Okay, but take a quick look at NAFTA. That one's a sloth's fault. We talk about technopoles. And a technopole, remember those areas of high-tech areas, it's an agglomeration. An agglomeration is when a whole bunch of companies that do the same thing gather together. Why? Because you can cut costs that way. If all the auto manufacturers agglomerate as they did in Detroit, then when you're shipping like, windshield wipers, tires, and stuff like that, they're all in the same place. You get economy of scale when you're shipping a lot more to one area. Agglomeration. We have all those in America, Hey, Las Vegas is an agglomeration of gambling and people's wages disappearing, okay? You have agglomerations of a lot of different kinds, like insurance. Go to Hartford, Connecticut, or Des Moines, Iowa. Insurance, there's agglomerations of a lot of stuff. A technopole is an agglomeration of high-tech companies. Thanks to e-commerce, electronic commerce, and the internet, you can deal all around the world. Technology, ideas, commerce flows. So these areas where these technical companies have exploded are called technopoles. In America, obviously Silicon Valley in California, really big technopole. You've got all the stuff there outside San Jose, all the Googles and everything like that. Boom, that's where we are. But that's not the only area. You have Seattle, Microsoft and all that area up there. You've got some of the other ones. Dallas, Texas, that area. Remember the old Texas Instrument computers and stuff that you guys use, okay? A lot of these things focus along colleges because that's where they get the minds, and then they go ahead and it's where you develop stuff. So like Massachusetts, the MIT, greatest college in America when it comes to technology. Hey, come on, MIT. And other areas in Boston, not like Boston was a college town, Harvard, Boston College, But anyhow, you also have the Raleigh-Durham triangle down in North Carolina, Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill, a lot of colleges there, Duke and stuff like that. big areas like that. You have other technopoles around the world. You have, like in Europe, Silicon Glen, Silicon Fed. You've got a lot of places like that. But but technopoles really important. Manufacturing. I just talked about deindustrialization. In America, we are a manufacturing company. We do make a lot of stuff still. We still make cars. Okay, they're assembled here. It makes sense. We make airplanes. Well, I checked this morning and it said Boeing was giving a buyout to people, so maybe not making as many airplanes as we could, but we still make the best airplanes in the world, which after this virus, they'll fly again. You know they are, and fly an American plane. We make weapons. We make some of the best weapons in the world. We make a lot of pharmaceuticals, and that's one of the things we have hope with this COVID thing that, come on, we'll develop stuff because we're a smart country. When we put our mind to it, we get her done, in the words of Larry the Cable Guy and Nebraska hero. But manufacturing in America today, we do make other stuff. We still do make some steel and stuff like that. The traditional American manufacturing belt is from Chicago all the way to straight across the East Coast, including areas like, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and that area. It's also nicknamed the Rust Belt. But of course, the Rust Belt, the jobs have disappeared. They've eroded. Hey, look at NAFTA and everything like that. Jobs have eroded. And politicians, if you want to be elected president, you got to go ahead and take a look at manufacturing jobs. And manufacturing jobs in America have been dropping a bit. Okay, so that old American Rust Belt, but it's not necessarily everything's manufactured today. Remember, a lot of those auto companies we talked about, the foreign ones, they assemble in other states other than Michigan. Right to work laws have changed a lot. That's why a lot of them down south, states like Tennessee and Alabama and stuff like that, are manufacturing now. And you also have like areas around like Houston, which are the big refinery area, Oklahoma, Kansas, and stuff like that. When you talk about well, let's just get into energy. You have to have energy. Think about the renewable and non-renewable sources of energy. You need energy for industry, okay? Gas, coal, oil, very traditional energies are all non-renewable. When you burn them, they're gone. We have a lot of coal in this country. We've got coal for hundreds of years. Of course, there's been a lot of controversy lately about whether or not it's pollutant, if it's worthwhile, etc. But the biggest thing is we have so much natural gas and it's so cheap. So many power plants have shifted over from coal to natural gas, and that's just been hard on the industry. Okay, but remember, there are non-renewable energies and renewable ones. Those of us here in Nebraska, you see the coal trains go rolling across the flatlands. That's the state of Wyoming, and it's coal coming across our state to all these plants and stuff. Okay, some of the non-renewable ones, like oil and stuff like that, you have to consider how much we have and where we are. And in America, using our technology with fracking, we've been able to get so much more oil out of things that we before maybe were not necessarily affordable. Now, renewable sources of energy. If you drive across Iowa or southern Minnesota, you'll see a ton of windmills, a ton of them. Why? Well, wind is renewable, but it's expensive to build those, and there's always been a lot of argument, is it worthwhile or not? So anyhow, to keep that, you have solar power. That's a lot more practical in areas like, Death Valley in California than it is necessarily like in Duluth, Minnesota, or other area, or in Seattle, where in the wintertime the sun is just a hint or a hope. So you have renewable. Nuclear energy, we talked a little bit about that, how in the 1960s it looked like the wave of the future will use nuclear power, But the problem with that is there's been some problems. In Russia, Chernobyl; in Pennsylvania, 3 Mile Island; in Japan, Fukushima, where they had a tidal wave off the coast and that affected their plant. And so nuclear energy is still considered, and is still used by a lot of countries, but a lot of countries are seriously looking at it again after Fukushima and deciding whether or not to have it. We here in Omaha, think about it, Nebraska has 2 plants, down by Nebraska City and up by Blair. The Blair one's closed, All right, take a look at some other stuff on the test that you have to consider. Global warming. Now, we talked about what is the greenhouse effect. That's a natural thing. It happens. Our temperature in the earth varies. We've had ice ages. We've had warmer periods, but global warming is one of those things that comes with this unit when we talk about the environmental stuff. And people would say global warming comes from pollutants in the air, all the gases up there kind of act like a blanket, keep the heat in, and changes the Earth's temperature. And we're not going to go whether it is or isn't, but just so you know that that's one of the things people talk about. And with that, you get melting of the poles. Greenland, the great ice sheets of Greenland are melting. Antarctica, where I was back in 1980, that's starting to break apart and melt. And a lot of people say it's possible that if a lot of that ice melts, then the oceans rise, and that affects the world because the climate, which is average temperature over a year of a place, it's determined by the ocean. We in America, we get El Nino and La Nina years because of the climate out in the Pacific and our weather patterns, the wind patterns from west to east. Europe, because of that Gulf Stream, their weather is affected by what's in the Atlantic. That warm water of the Gulf Stream keeps countries like Ireland a lot more habitable than like Upper Canada, which is the same level as, okay? So global warming could have an impact on all that. Of course, we live in Bennington, so you know what, the crud. If the oceans rise, hey, maybe beachfront property here in Nebraska, but it would be bad for everybody who lived along the coast. Think of all the cities around the world. A lot of the big cities obviously are right on the coast. So that's an effect. So take a quick look at like global warming and stuff like that. Acid rain was also on there. We talked, one of the things about a lot of times with industrialization, you have all the pollutants that are kicked up in the air, mixed with the moisture, comes down, and then that has an effect both on people, the infrastructure, roads and buildings, and plants and wildlife too. Okay. I'm looking at the list here. Forgotten maquiladoras. When you talk about NAFTA, that area along the northern border of Mexico, right by the United States, the cult used to be called the Maquiladora District, where American companies moved there. So you make your products in Mexico. You have the lower labor costs and other considerations, but you're right next to America, so you still save on the shipping costs. So that Maquiladora District of Mexico is a very important industrial area. Let's see, what else is on our list here of stuff? The core periphery model, good old Walsh and core periphery model. Think about it, the core countries, the MDCs. Those are the countries that got the industrial revolution, they've got the economics, they developed all the colonies around the world, and all that resources came in, things were manufactured there, all the cloth in England the cotton came to England, was made as cloth and shipped back to all the colonies. So core periphery, the core countries are always going to be economically the powerhouses. The periphery countries, the poor countries, they existed under colonialism to supply the core countries with all the basic resources and then buy the manufactured stuff back, which kept the higher level economic activities, the manufacturing and the design and selling and all that in those core countries. If you think about it and you want to take that a step further, core dependency. I mean, when you start thinking about the dependency model, that basically makes sure those countries that are poor will always be dependent upon those that are rich. Now, with the core dependency, it seems to say that always the core countries will always be rich and the other countries won't. But you have to consider there are certain things. South Korea in the 1950s, devastated after the Korean Wars. A horrible war took a huge toll on the people of South Korea. But in the 1970s, after Japan became an industrial power, they started sloughing off they outsourced their stuff to Korea and the Four Tigers. Remember the Four Tigers? South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. Just watched Crazy Rich Asians with my wife last summer. It was about Singapore and talking about how Singapore has become so expensive. Well, South Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Singapore, they are all now MDCs. South Korea has a higher standard of living than a lot of countries. They have a low fertility rate, which shows again their economic level is high. So South Korea has gone from basically a periphery country to a core country. And think of the South Korean cars you buy here in Omaha. The electronics and other stuff comes from South Korea. So it is possible, we do know, like with Rostow, countries can take off. They can move up. It's not always going to be a core and a periphery, the rich and the poor. There are rich countries in the world and there are poor countries in the world, but who's to say what's going to happen down the road? So do keep that one in mind. Let's see. The HDI, Human Development Index. If you want to get a scorecard so you can compare countries, what you need to take a look at is a lot of stuff. What's the life expectancy? How long do people live? We understand that in LDCs, there's all sorts of conditions, medical, health, and everything else. So in LDCs countries, the life expectancy is not as much as, say, a lot of the MDCs, which have higher standard of living, more doctors, better food, etc. And so life expectancy is a factor. But you have to take a look at literacy rate, too. Are people going to school? Are they able to read and write at a certain level? The amount of people that do go to school in your country. Of course, if you're looking at HDI, the human development index, you also have to basically take a look at income. That's important too. How much money do countries make? So you take all those things together, and it's a snapshot of a way we can compare countries together. Let's see, other stuff. Outsourcing. We watched a great movie about outsourcing. Love that movie. But outsourcing, so many countries today look real appealing to American companies because, again, a lot lower wages. And so with the beauty of the internet, why not ship your work over there? Or a lot of call centers back in the 80s and 90s. So when we watched the movie Outsourcing, it was about call centers from Seattle moving to India. Well, outsourcing, you can outsource all sorts of jobs. And a lot of companies in the old days, this Fordist model, we're going to do everything at one plant. Why not outsource it to let people do things differently? And outsourcing is where you send those jobs out. And you still get the product, but you're able to take it from a lot of areas and put it together. Okay? So take a look at outsourcing. Let's see. Fair trade products, we talked about that. You want to make sure that countries around the world, people are getting paid a fair wage, that they can have a good standard of living. So remember, fair trade products. You see that a lot in the grocery store. You'll see the symbol like on some coffee and stuff like that. Keeps you and lets you know that these are countries where people have been taken care of. Not enough of that in the world. We need a lot more of it. Let's see. We're not going to put Alfred Weber's least cost theory on the. You know what? I think it might actually be on there because we did talk about that. Basically, remember in class we talked about if the raw material that you make stuff out of is really bulky, then you put the factories right there. If the finished product is bulky, then you put the factory closer to the market. Like, got to take a new break. Like Coca-Cola, that's what we talked about. The main Coca-Cola down in Atlanta. But think about it. The biggest ingredient in a can of Coke is water. So if the finished product is a lot more bulky, they make the syrup in Atlanta, ship it all over the place, bottle it everywhere else. So the bottling companies for Coca-Cola are close to the markets. Weber's theory basically, it's the same with other stuff like cars. That's why like Toyota, Honda, and all those companies that make cars in America, the raw materials can be shipped in all over the place, but the finished product, a car, is very bulky. So you put that close to the market in America, okay? So do take a look at Weber's theory too. Let's see, what else we want to mention that's possible on the test. Let's see. Did talk about globalization, how countries are connected today so much. And that's why with this COVID thing, what's happening in one country of the world does have an effect on every other country in the world. You can't just close the borders. The world is so connected with both thoughts and ideas and products and material. And it's just everything's connected. And you see that when you start talking about organizations like the World Trade Organization, G8 countries and stuff like that, where countries have got to figure out a way of working together with their products because you want to sell in those countries as well as buy from them, but you want to do it fairly. So there's organizations like that. Do keep in mind, like OPEC, I put on the one PowerPoint we were talking about. With OPEC today, our gas prices are incredibly low. Holy crud, have you gone and put gas in your car lately? How cheap it is? Well, you shouldn't be putting gas in a car because you shouldn't be going anywhere. But anyhow, OPEC, you have Russia and Saudi Arabia pumping a lot of oil out, and normally OPEC works together to keep that supply down so the price goes up, but because they're having a problem, there's too much supply and there's just not enough demand. No one's going anywhere, so prices have really gone down. But those organizations talk about tariffs. When we put tariffs on stuff, like we put tariffs on Chinese products, they put tariffs back. You have trade wars. So we did talk about organizations like G8, WTO, and stuff, where countries can work together. And let's see if there's anything else on the test. And I'm just skimming. We're trying to make sure just the important stuff on the test, not every concept. This is a multiple choice test. Ooh, baby. But it's not. With distance learning, we're trying to keep what you need to know and how you can apply it. So just going over the basic concepts and hopefully you're able to apply each one of these things. And I think that's the basics of the, last one, microloans. We also had the one assignment about microloans. There's all sorts of, like Kiva and those other organizations where you can give microloans to people in different countries. And hopefully by using those loans, you can stir all sorts of economic hubs of activity. Usually, though, microloans are really small. They help the number of people they help is small. Of course, if you're one of those people that are helped, that's a good deal. But that's one way that you can do that, okay? It's kind of like Shark Tank for the third world. All right. All right, so hopefully this helps you out. It was just a quick look at some of the concepts. Again, tomorrow's test, I'll give you a bunch of terms. You're going to give me in a paragraph what it is, kind of define it, why that's important, and give me some examples of it, apply it. And then I'll give you the essay. I won't tell you what the essay is today, but it'll be a big topic that we talk about. And you're going to go ahead and give me examples in that, apply it, and show me connections or relationships with that. So for your test, that'll be new next week. Then we start the next unit on urban geography, and urban geography will be a lot more fun because with urban geography, just go walk down the street and you can see what we're talking about. And we'll try to do some stuff differently in different days. Until then, take care, study, get your homeworks in. Keep looking at the stuff on Classroom. It's a weird world, kids, not seeing you every day, and I miss the heck out of you. But we're still in school. We're still learning. Be safe. Take care. From me and the sloth.